Thank you for this wonderful introduction. I'd like to know why you're here. It's like the last day of our journey. I'm on the second last speech. And you came here today, right? So you probably have better things to do, but you're here. And I'd like to know why. What made you come here? Can somebody give me a reason?
To learn something.
You have an interesting title in your topic. The title was interesting.
The title?
Yes.
Well, let me make a confession to you. I chose this title because I thought it was boring. I was hoping that nobody would show up. Because if you think about it, if you think about all the sexy titles, and if you're all communicators, you know this better than me, it should be like 11 things you need to know about project management, why projects fail, this and that. But I thought I'll choose something regular. This is something that we don't normally do. We don't say, how does something work? No, we want to know why it fails, why planes fall down. So I said, I'll try this and see who shows up. I was curious. So thank you for being here. I'll try not to disappoint you. For those who fall asleep, and then I'm going to do a wrap-up so you wake up somebody who's sleeping and they'll catch up. Okay? Now, first of all, when we talk about the word project, this is what we see. These are buzzwords. These come from robots that look at books and documents and websites, and they put all these words together, right? So you have project management, obviously, costs, development, control, risk, planning, scope, all sorts of words. What's missing here?
Human beings.
Correct. Success. The word success is never associated with projects. Okay? And I thought this was crazy. I said, but the only reason you would do a project is to succeed, right? So why is it missing? And this is where the title came to me. It's so obvious, but it's not. When we talk about projects, we don't talk about success. We talk about how to do things. Okay? And there's a ton of literature about how to do it properly. Okay? It doesn't mean success. But before we go into it, what is a project? I know it's a boring subject, but we have to start somewhere. Okay, so this is one of those boring things. This comes from PMI, Project Management Institute. PM book is the Project Management Book of Knowledge for those who want to know more. It's a big book. It's very boring. It's excellent if you suffer from insomnia because you can read it and you'll fall asleep immediately.
I agree.
Yeah? So there are a couple of characteristics about projects. First of all, they're always established objectives. Okay? Normally, if it doesn't have established objectives, it's not a project. The other thing is, there's a defined lifespan with a beginning, and I want to repeat this, with an end. Okay? Projects end. If they don't end, they're not projects. And it should hit the organization. So if you're one person, you have one project, and you're the project manager, it's not a project, I'm sorry to tell you, and you're not a project manager. Sorry. You're all adults. Oh, sorry, then I'll move here.
Thank you.
Okay, is this better? Okay. The project should be doing something new or unique. If it's not new, if it's not unique, then again, sorry, it's not a project. And it should have a specific time, cost, and performance requirements. Because if you don't have these, then you will be doing things, but nobody will ever understand if it's done properly, not done properly, and you will open an endless debate. Now, this diagram you've probably seen. Anybody who's into project management? I didn't ask. Oh my God. Okay. I should sit down and let somebody else speak. But you've probably seen this already. This is the quadruple constraint. So you have the scope of the project, and then you have the quality that you need to respect with the project. You have costs that you need to maintain, okay, and then you have the time requirements, right? So these are different sets of requirements, and when they intersect, somewhere there's this tiny, tiny, tiny space where all of these requirements are met, and you have what is called success, right? So that's what this diagram means. It's a Venn diagram, so if all these things intersect, then that's where you succeed. right? That's one way of defining success. I'd like to argue that that's not the way I would like to define success this evening with you. So now from now on, almost all of what I say is either personal or it's because I misunderstood something. So the first dimension you need to think about, and that will stretch you, are time-related requirements. Time will push you into thinking a certain way. And then you have resources. And when I say resources, I don't mean just money. I mean people and other things. We'll talk about resources in a minute. And they will pull you to the other side. Then you have the quality. Right? You need to do something that's worthwhile doing. Right? And then you have the scope. This is one of the most difficult things to manage because you'll agree to do something and then somebody will say, yeah, but since you're doing it, why don't you do this as well? And they'll add things to you and they'll change things while you're doing them, right? And they'll expect you to, that all the rest doesn't change. So these will stretch you, okay, in different directions. And it's within this area that's stretched out is where you do your project, okay? And this is defined by expectations. These come from people. Because all the rest of the stuff we define, but this expectation does not necessarily mean there's a logical connection between what people expect and what they said in terms of time, resources, scope, and quality. Okay? So if you believe that, I'm sorry, again, that's what's going to happen. But we spoke about time. Okay? Now since we have project managers, I know we have engineers, how many of you are experts in quantum physics? Because I need help with this. Oh, come on, don't be shy. You won't tell anybody. Come on. Okay, well, I'll try to explain the relativity of time, okay? So bear with me. Now, one thing they say is on this planet, all of us are born and we have 24 hours in a day, okay? We're all equal, regardless of race, religion, beliefs, whatever. Even if you're a Toastmaster, it's the same thing. You still have 24 hours. And timers know this quite well. But is that true? I mean, is it really that true? Because imagine if there was a door, a blue door. Okay? It's important. Pay attention to detail. Blue door. Would it be always a minute is 60 seconds? Would it still stand true? On both sides of the door, right? That's what logic would say. But what if this door was a toilet? Now, 1 minute, if nature is calling you and you need to open that door, 1 minute is a long time. It's a terribly long time. And if you're on the inside, 1 minute is nothing. You're enjoying it. So the thing that you need to understand in terms of projects, in my view, is that time is something that you can measure. Urgency is subjective. And we need to understand what urgency is to be successful. And this is something you're going to hear. It should take a minute. Do you have a minute? Those are the things that will kill your time because minutes add up. Okay? Now, I also wanted to choose, in Toastmasters, they say when you make a presentation, you should also have references, that come from an authoritative source. So I did that with this presentation, and Dilbert will help me throughout this, okay, with wisdom, words of wisdom. Now, I don't want to read this to you. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So, there is a correlation that the less people understand what you're doing, the shorter the time will be in terms of expectations, okay? And the longer it will be in terms of what you need to do. Okay? That's it. That's another unwritten rule of project management. So, when we talk about resources, again, there's a lot of literature about resources, so I won't go into it. But typically, we talk about tangibles, okay? We talk about people, we talk about money, and we talk about equipment. And, there's a lot of things that we know about how to manage these, so I'm not going to go into it. But what I want to bring forward today to your attention are the intangibles or the semi-tangibles, for example. For example, when you do a project, you probably need some space, okay? Obvious, right? Well, not this, and you probably need some privacy, because maybe you're going to deal with something that's new, it's fragile, you need to protect it. You need to create that privacy. You need to perform experiments. Maybe you need a training room. Maybe you need test data, and you need a test environment to be able to test them. But it gets even more interesting when you go to the intangibles. Because, for example, we all know probably that a project manager is a manager that doesn't have authority, right? That's it's written in PM, but it's not something I make up. That's what they say. So you don't have any authority, okay? So you can't give permissions and authorizations. So if people need to work overtime, who's going to authorize it? You need to figure that out. And it's these intangibles where things get complicated. Because the tangibles are easier to manage, I believe, but it's the intangibles where you need to really understand how people think, how organizations work, who's who in the organization, who takes the decisions. And of course, managing resources, of course, is, again, we go to our words of wisdom. It's always important to understand if there's wasted resources in a project, and every corporation will have their own methodology. The dog method, I think, is a well-known method. That's what Dilbert proposes in terms of finding out who's wasting the resources. Okay? We're talking about people. So the important people on the project, okay, you know from your Toastmasters experience that the most important person in the room is not you, right? You've already suffered through that, and you know your ego is damaged and everything else. It's the same with project management. The most important person in the project is the sponsor. Now this, by the way, is not a PM book definition. This is my definition, because I took the definition and I added a couple of things to it. I added, is accountable for and truly desires the success of the project. Okay? Now how many people have a sponsor that doesn't fit this definition? Okay. My recommendation to you would be work on your elevator pitch, go to the captain, get a job, stay on the ship. Don't get off. Because if the sponsor isn't on your side, you're really, really alone. Then we have what we call the stakeholders. I like that word, stakeholders. Okay? So the definition here, this is maybe a Wikipedia type of definition. It's basically an individual, group, organization who may be affected by, or perceive itself to be affected by a decision, activity, or the outcome of the project. Now that's what I believe is important here, is it also you have these groups of people who perceive they could be affected by it. Okay? So that's a very human thing. It has nothing to do with processes and procedures, it's perception. And they can be within the organization, they can be outside the organization, they can have an interest for the completion of the project, they can have positive or negative impacts. Support stakeholder is not always on your side. Now, what I'd like to propose here is a map. Okay, I'm an engineer, so I know all models of the universe are false. Okay, this is not going to make an exception. Okay. The other thing I know is that normally, as humans, we can pay attention to 5 plus or minus 2 things. This is a 2x2 matrix. It's our last day, it's almost the last speech, so we should be fine, okay? 2x2, okay? So bear with me. So, on one side, we have the impact, the low impact, and the high impact, the positives and the negatives, okay? And the other side, we have the power, okay? The negative power and the positive power, in terms of the success of your project, okay? Now, the most important thing you need to do is to understand who's who in terms of stakeholders. So, and you need to have a strategy of how to manage these people. So the low impact and low power, you need to keep them informed. Keep these people informed, keep them happy so that they don't become a problem. Because if you don't, then they tend to move in one of those quadrants. Now the high impact and low power people, you need to use them as necessary. Okay? Get them involved when they can. Of course, this is obvious, right? Or maybe it isn't. It's those people who have a high power and are negative. You need to listen to them. So you're lucky, you're all Toastmasters, you know how to listen. So go listen to their concerns. I mean, we had lots of workshops about conflict and listening to people and understanding. We talked about perceptions. So this is something you need to do, absolutely. This is one of the most important things. Get them on board. Don't try to avoid them, because you probably can't. And of course, this is the easy one. the high impact, high power, positive people, get them, use them as much as you can. But it's not enough just to do this. We need to do something more. We need to also understand that we can influence, because we're Toastmasters, right? We can influence these people so that they can become more powerful and help you on the project. And we can also go to this quadrant and get them to move into the right one where their power is useful for us. Okay? But what we should not do is believe that we can manage everybody. So you need to definitely have also a plan in place so that those who are very powerful and are against you, at least you need to take the decisions and the actions so that they become less powerful. Now, I would like to do as an exercise, I would like to work on a project. And I was thinking, should I ask what projects are and how they are? But I thought that would be a bit difficult to do. And I thought, well, what is the project that is common to everybody in this room? Allegro, okay? So what I would like to do, if I can find a pen to write with, obviously, is, hold on, bear with me, don't go away.
Close the door. Or lock the door.
This is the only one I found.
Kyle, you have some spare pens, the big one markers from yesterday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So what I would like to do, just so that we get into it, is think about the stakeholders, okay? Allegro project, the stakeholders. Let's map them out. Let's see where they are, okay? So, very simply, okay? More or less the same diagram. So, who would like to propose a stakeholder, and then we discuss where they could be? Yes, please.
The participants.
The participants, good. So where would they be on these? Would be high impact?
Well, I would maybe like to be a bit more precise on the participants, because we have workshop leaders, so we have people in the coordination team like
Oh yes,
me,
we could go
and we have our
into
fellow Toastmasters just enjoying the workshops. Maybe we can be a bit more precise here, because the participants
Okay.
are a bit too vague here in this case.
Okay, so what would you, so just so that I understand, we say participants who are leaders, participants who are what?
Yeah, from the organizational team.
Audience?
Yeah, audience.
Okay.
And organizational team, you can say.
Oh, and the organizers?
Yes.
Okay.
But they are also your sponsors, because everyone is.
Well, no, hold on, is that true? I mean, in some cases they are, in some cases maybe we have another set of. So I would argue that the sponsors are not just limited to these people, because there are people who have sponsored this event who are not here today, right? So, I believe so. I believe, I mean, for mitigating circumstances, some people couldn't come, or other people in the beginning already said, we will sponsor it, but they won't be coming. So we do have the sponsors, right? And who else do we have?
Costa.
We have Costa, exactly, okay? And Costa itself, we could break down, but we won't,
Oh no, we don't want that.
because we have another workshop and, we're coming to Salona tomorrow morning.
We will
But just-
also other travelers.
Other travelers, yes. So we have, people, the world is not just Toastmasters, you probably know that, right? I mean, there are other people.
Thanks for
No,
the
maybe no.
There are, I know that you don't think about them too much, but they exist, we run into them in the corridors. So let's map these people out. Could you help me? So let's start with the first one. So these are the participants who are also workshop leaders. Somebody like myself, where would you put me? And be gentle, come on. But
High impact, low power.
I'm probably positive, right? I'm a bit pessimistic, but positive.
Involves an extreme, a distance.
You would, where would you, okay, because there are other people, so the average would take us there regardless of my situation, I guess. So that's that. So what about the audience? Do they impact us positively?
Low impact, low power.
Yeah, low power, you think it's low power?
Yeah. Don't say it. They don't
Well,
care.
maybe high power,
Well,
low
let's
impact.
put the low power, because I like that, so we'll put the low power, but they're positive, right? So they
I
would
would
be,
not agree to low power.
Well-
At least a bit more to the middle.
Yeah,
For the following
I will
reasons.
take that
Yeah,
objection
okay.
on board in a second,
Okay.
because I believe that we can move this exactly like this arrow here. We can move, but then we'll discuss how we could do that, maybe, if we have the time. Just, so the PO, the organizers, so the organizers, I mean, they're high power and high impact, right? Yeah, so they're like really here,
Thank you.
right? That's O, by the way. Okay? And then we have the sponsors, and they're also here. I would, unless you believe we have a sponsor who's not positive, but I think that's not a Toastmasters case, so we have the sponsors here. Costa, so what does Costa have to do with this?
High power, low impact.
High power, low income,
I'd say nice.
yeah? Any other suggestions?
I would move at least from, sorry, that's me again.
Yeah?
I move it a bit more in the middle between low and high impact, because we have some restrictions here for Costa, so they have an impact on how we organize it, the stuff. It's
Okay.
not low.
So you would put them here or here, sorry?
No, power level was okay. I would, from an impact level, I put a bit more from low to the middle.
Okay, so you would put them here,
Somewhere there,
Yeah.
somewhere there.
Costa like this.
High power, right?
Oh, okay, sorry.
Says high power.
Really? High power?
Yeah, the problem is when you organize such event like this,
But
you are
that's
fully
impact
relying
you're
on the
talking
ship.
about, not power.
I would, then, sorry, maybe I misunderstood, because Katya, I thought,
Okay.
had said it would be,
High power?
did
High
you say?
power, low impact.
Okay, so you're
Well,
saying high
a
power,
second, why
low
low
impact here. So you basically were saying it should be here, right?
Why low impact? Why know why?
Sorry?
Why low impact?
It's medium impact
From
now.
my point of view, because from the purpose of the Allegro, the impact was lower,
So
but
we-
the power
I have a
very
question
high.
about the definition of power and impact, because I'm confused.
You're
between
confused.
The
Power of
difference
what?
between
Oh, I
power
like-
and impact.
Can I join you in your confusion then? Confuse me as well, continue.
Because someone can have an impact, is that power because they have an impact? So I'm confused about the definition between what you mean by power and what you mean by impact. Because, for example, Costa can influence the way we run the workshops because they have certain types of meeting rooms and
Well,
certain,
let me-
but is that power or impact?
Okay, well, let me call it this way. Can they call it off?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
Can they change the shape?
Yeah.
The shape, what do you mean by shape?
Well, I mean, they decide the meeting rooms and everything, it's a negotiation process, but they put the cards on the table, right? So,
Yeah.
so, you know, they have a lot of power, and they have a medium impact, okay? They don't go into the content though, so the impact is not that they define what we say, they define where we say it, and the hours in which we say it, but they don't define what we say. Does that make it this
So
with
for
you?
you, power is more a logistical thing, and then impact is more like a content-related thing? I'm just trying to understand the difference between power and impact.
Well, I think power on its own is making things happen or not happen, right? And impact would be giving it a shape or form of some sort.
Okay, so it is more
That would be
It's more related
content-related,
to
okay.
decision process.
Yeah.
Power is more related to decision process.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I mean, it's a very good question, but it's too sophisticated for me, without a drink, so we can talk about it the same And I will probably walk away with your confusion, you know,
No,
don't
but I don't
expect
even
it.
know.
impact, but they've only an impact on the logistics, they don't have an impact on the content,
Oh,
we
do
say
we?
in the
In terms of
workshop,
time?
pre-conference.
Okay, we have, so we put the coaster there, and then we have the travelers. So what about the travelers?
That's why that'll be covered under
They're here.
high power.
And we want to keep them there, right? Yeah? Well, maybe not, exactly, so that's good, I mean, that's the whole idea. Maybe there's a subset of travelers that could get interested into this Toastmasters thing, and we could make them from, you know, low power, low impact to a Toastmaster member, we don't know, okay, we could. And that's the whole idea. There isn't any solution to any of these things, but it's just a way of thinking that I wanted to share with you. Okay? And I believe that the stakeholder management is the least spoken about piece of project management in general, about projects, because at the end of the day, we're going to come to this whole thing about success is the stakeholders define what success is at the end of the day. Okay. So I'll move on. Okay. I went the wrong way. Okay. So when we deal with people, there's another aspect that we need to think about. Are they optimists or are they pessimists? Right? And there are lots of jokes about optimists and pessimists, right? You know them. The ones you don't know, you can exchange between yourselves. I'm not going to bore you with jokes. But it's one of those things that's important with projects, because optimistic people will ask a certain set of questions, and pessimistic people will ask another set of questions, implying their optimism or pessimism in the process. Okay? And the typical example of this is, is the glass empty? Is the glass half full or half empty? Right? And it's a simplification, because the question itself implies that the glass can only be full or empty, right? That's what this question is saying. There's only two options. It's either full or empty. Okay? But if you ask a group of people, and I don't know how it would be in this Toastmasters, you'll probably come up with something like this. Okay? So you'll have the optimists and pessimists. You'll have the realists, the physicists, the surrealists. You'll have the skeptics and utopists. And you'll have the nihilists as well. They're difficult to find. They're there, but you don't see them that much. But that's the way it is. So in real life, this is what happens. So it's not just full or empty. It's any of these could work, right? So, and that's what's going on in the stakeholders' mind.
So let's test
So maybe the questions should be, because instead of asking a closed question that's pushing them into optimist or pessimist, we can ask them, how full is the glass? And how do they know the glass is full? But I don't know. Do they see it? Do they lift it up? Do they drink it? Do they taste it? Estimation and planning. And one of the things we need to do, and there are books about these things, so I won't bore you too much, is you need to estimate. You will, as somebody managing a project, you will need to estimate and plan a project. That's one of your jobs. Okay? It's a bad job. So the things that you should do is, first of all, a bit of humility. You probably are not doing something that nobody has ever done before. Okay? So somebody else somewhere has done it, probably, a piece of that task. So ask somebody who's done it. It's that simple. Okay? And if you can't find somebody who's already done it, then ask an expert. There are people who know more than you. In my case, that's almost always true. And the other thing you can do is you can consult with a mentor. Okay? Now, and we know the importance of a mentor. On a project, if you don't have a mentor, what should you do? You go get a mentor. It's that simple. And don't go on if you don't have a mentor. Things you shouldn't do. Okay? The things you shouldn't do is never ask your boss. The guy's paying you for this. Okay? He's paying your salary so that you can come up with an estimate. Don't go ask him how much or how long, or don't. That's a very bad way to start a relationship with the boss. Don't ask the sponsor. The sponsor needs to keep a safe distance so that the sponsor can help you when help is required. And in general, I would say, my recommendation, we don't ask the stakeholders. Okay? So what exactly are we talking about? Well, we're talking about questions related to resources. Okay? We want to know the skills, the competences. If we're talking about equipment, we're talking about capacity, specifications. We're talking labor units. Now, I am an old man, and I used to say man days in my estimates. Okay, and then somebody pointed out to me that I should be using person days because I was excluding women, so I take that on board. No offense intended to anybody, but it's people days. Okay, duration is from start to finish, which is different from the effort. And again, a typical example of this would be that a woman can have a baby in 9 months, but 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. So there's a difference between duration and labor. Okay, and constraints, the time constraints, sequence constraints, and all of these things about start to finish, finish to finish, etc. I won't bore you that, but you need to think about these things. Okay, and again, you'll be asked to find creative solutions to problems. Okay. In some cases, if the corporate policy allows, you can use a time machine to go back and fix the things that you didn't do. That's one of the proposals here. Okay. The other thing is risk. It's a word that we don't like. Nobody likes it, but we need to do it. And I think that when we talk about risk, there's like 3 days training about project risk management. So we're going to do it in 30 seconds here, so bear with me. But it's basically risk. The definition of risk is probability times impact. So the probability that something bad can happen times the impact of the damage that it could do to whatever you're doing. Okay? And the multiplication of these two gives you a measure that is called risk. Okay? And I think in colloquial English, we sometimes mix risk with probability or impact or both, but the technical definition is this. Now, I know there's a lot that could be said about this, but I wanted to keep it simple. So basically, in front of a risk, the things that you can do in terms of making your project successful is you can do stuff, mitigating actions to reduce the risk. You can transfer the risk to somebody else, right? Like one of the proposals I had heard about the traffic problem in New York was make all the streets one way to New Jersey, and you transfer the whole problem. The other one is you can accept what's happening, c'est la vie, that's it, and move on. Or you can avoid it. You can change the course of what you're doing and avoid it. And there are variations to this as well, but I won't go into it. Okay. In terms of risk management, there's of course, Dilbert again comes to our aid, and there's a whole question about is really management necessary, right? And if everybody did what they were supposed to do, then maybe we wouldn't need managers, okay? And of course, in this case, in this specific example here, the incompetence of the management is, avoids the risk, basically. Okay. So what I'd like to talk about is, at the end of the day, you need to understand what you're managing. And one of the things, measures of this is complexity. So what is complexity? It sounds complicated and complex, doesn't it? Complexity. But think of this. This is where we started, right? This is the buzzwords and all of these things. So there's a suggestion intrinsically that all of this stuff could be very, very complicated. But I just wanted to give you a simpler way to look at complexity, okay? Well, first of all, we did this already, the stakeholder layout, okay? So if you have a lot of people all over the place on a stakeholder diagram, that's an indicator of complexity. It means it's going to become complicated because you need to have different strategies with different groups of people. Okay? Again, when you do your risk analysis, if you have high-risk items that are different from one another and you can't really transfer those to anybody and you can't avoid them and you have to say, I accept it, I accept it, I accept it, well, careful. That's complexity. The total cost. We're sensitive to numbers. We're living in a world where we expect everything to be free and now. Okay? So when we have money involved, people get excited. Even if it's not their money, they get excited. I don't know why, but that's just the duration. Okay? There's only one thing that doesn't change, and that's change. It's constant. So everything changes. So if you have a long project that takes a year or 2 years, many of the assumptions you made will no longer be true. So that's another complexity. Are you introducing new technology? Okay? If you're introducing new technology, that itself is a project. So if there's new technology involved, then that's another complexity. The market stability and business climate. So for example, if you were in the petroleum business right now, that would be a complex thing to do because nobody knows how much petroleum is going to cost. Some people say it's going to be $10, others say it's going to be $200. Who knows? Okay. And of course, the number of people and departments that are affected. Okay. If you're affecting a large group of people, then that is a complexity that you need to think about. Okay. And of course, organizational environment, hierarchy, silos, if there's a mirror level, and all of those things. And at the end of the day, your people, the people that you work with, how competent are these people, and what are their skills? Have they done this type of thing before? So looking at this, can we have also considerations about the complexity of Allegro? What would you say about Allegro? For example, for the stakeholder layout, what would you say? Is this a complex project from a stakeholder point of view?
Medium complex.
Medium complex. And because we have very different stakeholders, right?
Ask Patricia, is it middle?
Sorry?
We should ask Patricia, is it in the middle?
Surprise her tonight at the closing ceremony as a result of that workshop.
Okay. What about the risks? Well, we're here, so I'm assuming that the risk analysis was done and was done well. We've been able to succeed. I think that's something wonderful. What about total cost? Let's talk about money for a minute. Just cheer you up a bit. So if you were thinking about the money dimension, what would you include here?
The ticket cost.
You need to come here because these people have fallen asleep, so I'm sorry about that. But
The cost of attendees to attend, there's a cost for, each person has to invest to attend this
Right.
event.
Okay, that's
I
what
would,
cost.
I would not put this as a project cost, because you can say we have 1 people attending, 5, 10, 500 whatsoever. It's not a cost for the
There's
cost to get it
definitely
started.
attendees costs, right? That's true, but but from their point of view, it's not how much they paid for the event, it's what it costs them, you know, so
Exactly.
it's
Could
the
be,
travel,
yes.
and what they had to do, and maybe they had to get a babysitter or whatever.
Flyers like this.
Yeah, there's these types of costs, right? So if you put all of them, if you think of how much money was moving around, or had to move around for the Lego project, the number would be a significantly high number, with all of these people involved, right?
No.
The costs were kept very low.
Yeah.
The costs were kept very low.
The
Yes.
cost for the participation was low, but the money involved, well, no.
They kept it low. They
Yeah.
had no budget, so they kept it low.
Exactly.
Yeah, but for
Yeah,
your
but-
family and everything.
Oh, for
back
us.
Yeah, I'm
As
saying,
participants. Yes,
how
for
much,
us as
I'm saying how much
participants.
money moved around because of it.
Oh, yes,
Okay?
yes, yes.
It's not how much you paid. I'm saying how much money moved, exchanged hands because of this project.
Oh,
Because that's what, so every time money is involved, there's usually people with interests involved, okay? So they're in some way concerned because there's a financial transaction. That's the point I'm trying to make. The duration
Year.
The year.
took a year.
Yes.
That's what Patricia
Took a
said.
year, yes.
It took a year, so that's not bad. It's not a short-term project. We didn't introduce new technology, perhaps, but we did introduce very new ideas.
Exactly,
So they
yes.
had, in terms of maybe not high-tech, in terms of electronics, maybe we didn't, but in terms of algorithms, in terms of doing things differently, we introduced a large set of ideas, right? That was my impression. So some of these ideas will flourish and some of them won't, right? So that increases, so everybody's walking away from this probably with action items, you know, what I want to do when I go back to my club. So there is an introduction of new things. Okay, the stability, business climate, I don't think there's much to say. Number of people and departments affected, and those that will be affected, if you think of it that way. Okay? There's pathways coming in, yeah? But it's also that because most of you are leaders, you're going to go back to your clubs, and you're going to impact the people in those clubs with what with your experiences here. So it's not going to impact just 100 or so people attending here, or 200 people. It's going to impact probably a couple of thousand people actually. 3 districts, yeah. So that's a large number. Okay. Okay, the organizational environment and team skills and competencies probably are not factors that increase the complexity. Okay, but at the end of the day, so we could say that Allegro is a relatively complex project, right? You agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I'd like to go back to this, where we started from. So this is basically the quadruple constraint, the way I drew it. And my argument is that we spend a lot of time on the time and resources axis, okay? Between the time and resources. And we don't spend a lot of time actually on the scope quality aspect in project management. And we should spend a little bit more. And the reason I'm saying this is there's a misunderstanding often about objectives and success criteria. Now, most of you will know that objectives should be SMART, right? And you'll see this, it should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable or achievable, it should be relevant, okay, or realistic, and it should be time-based. So SMART, you've probably seen this before. So Katya is saying, you're going to see it. Okay, well, anyway. And everybody will agree that their objectives are SMART, right? That nobody's going to say, I don't have a SMART objective. They say, oh, of course it's SMART. No, it's specific. Oh, yes, it's measurable. Oh, it's attainable. Of course, it's realistic, relevant, time-based, all of that. But you see, all of these are abstract concepts because when people then, in their minds, when they imagine, see, everybody paints a different picture. They paint a different picture from these things. And each picture in people's mind is different. And that picture that they paint as a success criteria, it's not the SMART definition. They agree to that. but it's not what they paint internally. And that's, I think, one of the things that we have the responsibility to find out. How do they paint the picture? Okay? So, again, it's the quality of the questions that's important here. So one of the things that you can ask these people that are involved is, how will they know the project is done? It's an incredibly powerful question. And the other thing you can ask is, how would other people know it's done? According to them, their version. And when I say other people, I mean clients, I mean employees, I mean suppliers, I mean authorities, I mean your husband, your wife, your children. What will change? Because the whole thing, we said in the beginning, the definition of a project is it does something that's new or unique. Okay? So something should change. If nothing changes, then it wasn't a project. Sorry. You've done something, but it's not a project. So again, summing up, what will change and how will you know? So there's the what and there's the how. It's a questions day because we did a lot of questions also in Lorenzo's presentation, so we're asking ourselves questions today. And just to put a Toastmasters touch to it, okay? This is something we do in Toastmasters. We say, well, if your speech was the best speech in the world, it was the winning speech, what will you change? It's one of those things that we do in feedback. So what will you change in your speech to be the best speech? So if this project could be the best project ever, how would those answers change? Because that change will give you their idea about their criteria. What is sensitive? What is important? Okay. And of course, we asked Dilbert again for a definition of success. Okay. Project plan is so complicated the field is assured. Well, I'll let you read the rest. But this is basically something that we always look for. What is success anyway? So we spoke about success, but I made the assumption that we agreed upon it. But actually, it's a very dull thing. If you look at the definition, it's the achievement of an action within a specified period of time or within a specified parameter. That's the definition. Look it up on a dictionary. It's a very dull thing, but we get emotional about it. And my question to you would be, what motivates you? We had a wonderful presentation just before this one about motivation. Okay, so what motivates you? Do you want to have success? Is it the having thing? Do you want to succeed, so it's doing it? Or do you want to be successful? And I would argue that probably the thing that would motivate you more would be being successful. So if this is true, I would like your help. What should be the correct title of this workshop? Because I said in the beginning, the title was wrong. So
What is project management? What is project management?
You would say, what is project management? Okay. Anything else, please?
How to be successful.
How to be successful. And you would add something related to project or
Doing project. Doing
in
project.
projects. Okay. Okay. I'll come here to my audience that's hiding behind this pole here. What would you say?
Successful project.
Successful projects. Okay. Whatever it is, whatever works for you will be a better title. So I will wrap up in a Toastmasters way. If I were to do an elevator pitch about what I said for the last 40 minutes, this is what I would say. Okay? It's the quality of our questions that determine the quality of the answers that we receive. And it's those quality of those answers that determine what we shall do, okay? And how successful we will be. So if we wrap it up, if you want to be successful in project, oops, that's not what I want.
No, it's back. It's back.
Okay. Oh, sorry, it's back. Okay. What is the business challenge? What do you need to deliver it? Okay. What resources? What will you do? What are the actions? How will you do it? That's your schedule. Okay. How will you know you did it? So it's the SMART objectives and success criteria. And how well did you do? At the end of the day, that will define your success. So the fact that we're still here, you're listening to me, is a success of Allegro. One last thing I'd like to ask you is a big applause for the Allegro team, because it's thanks to them that we're here today.